We're reconvening for March 11th, April 1st and 7th, and this is the April 8th meeting. We're just to make sure for quorum, you have your video on, and this public hearing is being conducted under Ministerial Order M192, so we are participating remotely. If our connections are lost during any time of this meeting, we'll pause and just to get people back online. And members of the public can listen to proceedings via live stream and YouTube link, which is tweeted out at Van City Clerk, and that's a good reference point for everything here on Twitter at Van City Clerk. Just to remind Council that we have a long-standing commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including utmost respect for all genders. So when addressing speakers and staff, please avoid using gendered honorifics, and please use the first and last name of the person. I know that feels a bit strange sometimes, but I think it's a good practice to get into, and or the role and title. So instead of Mr. Mayor, it could be Mayor or Kennedy Stewart or whatever you think. So thanks for the work on that so far. Lastly, following the updated guidance issued on February 5th, in-person participation for local government meetings is not permitted under the PHO, and so speakers will be calling in, and we have a number this evening. But before that, we have the roll call. Please, clerks, go ahead with the roll call.
Yes, Mayor Stewart in the chair. Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor DiGenova. Councillor DiGenova. Councillor Fry.
Here.
Councillor Swanson.
Here, and could I get some tech help?
Howe is on it.
Please.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Weeb.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. Councillor Dominato.
Present.
Councillor Bly.
Present.
Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Kirby-Young. The meeting has quorum, Mayor Stewart.
Thanks very much, clerks. And let's see, so where we were, well, first, of course, before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded traditional territories, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and thank them for their generosity to all live on these lands, and thank the staff for all their hard work. Just a reminder that speakers have 5 minutes to make their comments and should be state whether they support or oppose the recommendations, and if they are a resident of Vancouver. Speakers may only speak once and should follow along on Twitter at Van City Clerk for updates. You can always submit comments in writing, vancouver.ca/public-hearing-comments for the online form. Speakers who are pre-registered with presentations will have to help you through your presentation because there's a slight delay, and just say next for the next slide. Our role tonight is to be a quasi-judicial body. It means that we only consider the merits of the application in front of us, and we can ask clarifying questions or technical advice, but should save debate for after the close of speakers. After we complete hearing from speakers, we can approve in principle the application, refuse the application, or defer the application. And so we are on item number 4 on our agenda, the final item, which is the East Fraser Lands Official Development Plan. We had the presentation last night, and we are into a round of questions from council. We're just finishing our first round. Councillor Boyle has about 2 minutes left. Councillor Weeb is also on the list, and then Councillor Kirby-Young moved a motion for a second round of questions, and so she is on the list there. So Councillor Boyle, do you have anything else you'd like to ask staff? You have another chance after speakers as well.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have more questions for now. I'm happy to hold them till after and move to speakers.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Weeb.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've got one point of order, and that is that Melissa DiGenova was not here during the attendance roll call, and that was actually Aaron. It was Little Boyle that made the comment, and so just for clarity and to ensure that the records are consistent, I think it would be helpful to make that correction.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Anything else, Councillor Weeb?
No, I'll go right into my questions. First question is on the overpass. I see that on one of the slides, it talked about the northern connection, and I'm just wondering if that is included as one of the amenities, and how do we see that as going to be able to reconnect this neighborhood to Champlain?
Staff?
Hi, this is Kirsten Robinson calling from the planning department. There has been considerable discussion about the off-site links to the upland community. There are 3 potential upland connections. One is in the Kinross Ravine. The second one is generally aligned with the High Street, and then the third one is over on the eastern edge of the site. There are stairs on the eastern connection that we are already working on. The more central location, which I think you're referring to, hasn't had a planned overpass to date. The strategy has been to try to humanize a little bit Marine Drive, and so there is a pedestrian connection there. Engineering staff are working on a connection, which I will pass over to them if they can add.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Carson Chan from Engineering. Yes, thanks, Kirsten, for providing us a high-level summary of some of the work that we're planning. So, yeah, as was indicated, there's potentially 3 primary upland connections that we've been exploring to date. All of them are pedestrian or accessible routes. The one on the west side would be through Kinross Ravine Park, and we're working on that one in collaboration with Parks. So engineering's facilitating improvements to the crosswalks and sidewalks on the north side of Marine Way. But the actual design of the upland connection through the park would be led by Park Board, and that includes upland connections all the way up into Evercrowley Park. If we move over towards the town square, there's a fairly narrow and very steep corridor. It's a 25% grade and a 10-meter wide utility corridor that we've been looking at constructing a staircase through. Due to the space constraints and the grade, we've determined that it's quite limited for accessibility options, and so we've looked at improving the connection that is further east towards Boundary Road. That one is 15 meters wide and would likely facilitate switchbacks and provide access for all ages and abilities. Those are the items that we've been working on to date in that neighborhood.
Okay, and I'm interested in the Kinross option. I know that the Person Disability Advisory Committee and some of the members of the community are wondering if there's an opportunity for an elevator on the south side of the street, recognizing that it is a pretty big incline, and create a connection between the both neighborhoods that do have a lot of seniors, and it would create access to the water. So it's great to hear that's part of that, but that funding is not included in this report today. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. If you would like some more information, I can pass the mic over to my colleagues in Parks, and they can provide some more details about the design work that's underway for the Kinross Ravine corridor.
It's okay. I think the main goal for me is that we try to find funding for that project. And I'm wondering through the staff, in Zone 5, I recognize that that doesn't seem to be included in this. Is there an opportunity to get funding through the DCLs and CACs in the Zone 5 redevelopment? And do we have a timeline for when that zone looks to be redeveloped?
I can answer that. It's Kirsten Robinson. We did factor all of the DCLs and CACs accruing from that site into the work on the financial plan and strategy. So there isn't currently funding available for an elevator. The pathway is in the budget. The pathway is stairs, and I think there's space for a switchback accessible path through that Kinross Ravine.
But a overpass with an elevator is not. That would be something that we'd have to get senior level funding for, or other levels of funding. Is that correct?
Yes, there isn't funding allocated for those within the current DCL outlook. So
Okay,
yes.
and one of the diagrams showcased a future.
We're at the 5.
Okay, I'll hold my questions after we listen to speakers. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. That's it for questions from from council in this round. Anyway, just to let council know that Councillor Kirby-Young has just sent in a note saying that she won't be attending this evening for personal reasons, so I just wanted to pass that along. Let's see. So, council, that's it for questions.
Point of privilege, Mayor Stewart.
Oh, there you are. Okay, Councillor Dejanova.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I signed on late, and my apologies. It was for personal reasons, but I wanted you to know I have been listening, and I am here. I will just have to be attending by phone tonight. My apologies.
No problem. Thanks for letting us know. Now, council, we're going to hear from the public. Our first speaker is
Mayor Stewart.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. My apologies for the interruption. Staff, when they did their presentation last night, questions came directly to them, but they had another portion of their presentation which was being anticipated to happen tonight. I think Kirsten was just about to say that.
Yes, I was. I was going to say that before we move on to the speakers list, we'd like to pass to Brad Jones, who's the Senior Vice President of Development at West Group Properties, for comment. West Group Properties is the master developer for EFL, and they've funded the planning process to update and revision the East Fraserland's official development plan. West Group's also been working collaboratively with the staff team to help resolve challenges around the amenity delivery, with a particular focus on the community center. So with that, I'd like to pass it to you, Brad.
And just before we speak, it's okay with council. It wasn't in our script, and we're a little out of order. But you know, sorry, this would usually come earlier, but we're okay with this. I don't see any objections. Great. Okay, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you to staff for that. I'm just going to try to share a presentation here, so just bear with me for 1 second. Can you see that okay on the screen?
Yep, but it's a little small. And I'm going to just check to make sure it's on the public screen. Yeah, that's better size. And I'm just checking the public screen here to make sure that's coming up. Just 1 second, please.
Yep. The clerk here, we're just getting it up on the public screen.
Okay, yep, it's up on the public screen now. Okay, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brad Jones, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Development for West Group Properties. West Group's the owner and master developer of the East Fraserlands, also known as the River District. Over the past 10 years, the community has grown tremendously as the vision of the 2006 ODP is being implemented. Today, there are 3,500 residents approximately living in the community, and development continues to progress with approximately 1,300 homes under construction at the moment, including market rental by West Group and affordable housing by Vaha and their partners. In addition, infrastructure servicing is continuing to be completed to get the next phases ready for development. And these population numbers are in addition to the roughly 3,500 residents that have been living in West Fraserlands for the past few decades. What we like to say is it's not just a community plan anymore, it's a real community. It's a place where people are walking their dogs and raising their families. Every year is marked by growth, more retailers, more shops, more services, and new residents moving into the community. And it's become a real hub for families. And in many cases, our purchasers are multi-generation, and they're moving back to South Vancouver. They're moving down the street from their parents, or the kids buy, and mom and dad decide to buy down the street, which is a great thing to see in the community. Staff went over this in their presentation, but just quickly, development just proceeded from the western neighborhood towards the central neighborhood. West Group's focused primarily in the last 6 years, building out the town square and delivering the shops and services that are vital to the community. Today, there are nearly 2,100 homes complete, including 269 market rental units by West Group. And there are 1,370 homes under construction, with 119 market rental by West Group. And I believe 356 affordable housing units by Vaha. And then in addition, shown in purple here, in the design and permitting stage is another just over 1,000 homes, with 178 of those being market rental, and another 337 affordable housing units by Vaha. And then in addition, just focusing on the town center plaza, completion of this and the occupancy of it by retailers and services was a really big milestone for the build out in the community, as it's established a real core and a real hub for things to take place. It's all focused around Central Plaza with local and regionally serving retail. Speaking specifically to the 10-year ODP review that's in front of you tonight, this is a really exciting milestone for us. We've been actively working on this since 2016 with staff and the community. And so this is the culmination of years of work, public feedback, and design workshops. The process really began in 2016 when we started having conversations with city staff, really seeking to rezone the Eastern Neighborhood Area 3, which is part of the ODP but not yet zoned. And at the time, staff actually didn't support moving that forward without looking at the ODP for a 10-year update. And so it was at this time we really started, re-engaging with the community and doing some early community consultation to get an understanding of, first, what are the people that, have recently moved into the community think, and then really engaging with the West Fraserlands community as well. So from there, the planning program began. Public consultation took place through 2017, 2018, and generally concluded in 2019, with 2020 focusing on the financial plan analysis and responding to the impact of the UDCL on the ability to deliver amenities. In developing the proposed plan, West Group and our consultant team engaged in a number of design workshops with a multidisciplinary staff team from the city side. And we presented a number of different design options, really looking at different approaches to develop an updated master plan, and ultimately took these to 6 open houses and received feedback from the community, which culminated in putting together a final plan based on that feedback. The proposed evolution of the plan brings a number of exciting updates and improvements, including expanded housing diversity with the addition of over 500 secured market rental units and 350 social and affordable housing units. An additional 2 acres of public park has been added to the plan, including a fairly expanded waterfront park plaza and shoreline park network. It includes provision for farther childcare. And in addition, we've really worked with staff over the past few years on this financial plan piece to put together what we think is a reliable plan to deliver the public amenities in this plan. One of the exciting elements through this process was actually going back and looking at some of the work that had been done and looking at kind of new ideas. And so one of the things that we did was re-examine the public space network a little bit. So we engaged a really kind of world-class consultant in Gale, who are specialists in public spaces and people movement, to look at the plan and reimagine the riverfront plaza and the interaction with the community center. And through this process, worked with staff to design a standalone site for the community center, which is a big improvement, something desired by the city, and really gave us the option to kind of just reimagine the foot of this high street that connects down from the town center. And so we went through a process to reallocate density to create this great waterfront hub network that council approved midway through this process. And the result here is just a really strong hub at the foot of River District Crossing. The community center anchors the space. It's bounded on the periphery with retail and provides direct linkages to the riverfront park network. What you've seen in front of you with the financial plan recommended by staff includes West Group taking on the obligation of delivering the community center to the city. And the goal really is to deliver that in line with the timing of the surrounding development. So our vision is to have that complete as really a large phase, so that the community center, the retail around it, the park plaza, the shoreline development, the park development is all done at the same time to deliver, really like a regionally important public space in South Vancouver. We think it could have the impact on this neighborhood similar to what Shipyards has done in North Vancouver, or Creekside and Olympic Village Square have done in Southeast Falls Creek. So we're exceptionally excited about this opportunity, and it's just another opportunity for us to really focus on amenity delivery in this neighborhood. Over the years, we've done everything we could to support the city in that. At times, we've done design work for Valha to help move development permits along. We've built a park in Area 2 for the city. And then on top of that, we operated the River District Center, which was really a community hub from 2011 until the beginning of the pandemic. And just to close, I just wanted to reiterate, we're really excited at this point to be in front of council with this updated plan after a number of years of work on it. We think the opportunities that are created by this, including delivering the community center in kind, the additional market rental and affordable housing and park space, are great additions to the plan. it's been an extensive process with significant consultation, and we're really hopeful to move it forward. We want to thank the staff team who work very diligently on the River District always, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Council, we have had our opening round of questions to staff, but if you do have questions to the applicant, this would be your only chance to ask them due to the rules of the public hearing process. So I'm just looking to see if anybody's on the queue to ask questions. Councillor Weeb, I've got you on for up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Brad, for coming today. The delivery of the community center has obviously been a hot topic and a big part of this conversation. Can you talk to the delivery and the timeline that you think your team could deliver?
Yeah, we've worked on this extensively with staff, and our goal is to deliver it as soon as possible. I think the key part of that delivery is going to be completing the subsequent rezoning of Area 1, with which Kirsten Robinson reviewed last night. So Kirsten and I were speaking about this over the last few weeks, and what's in the report is a start in 2025. We would like to try to bump that up to maybe the end of 2023 or early 2024, but the key is really going to be that approval process moving ahead. We would advance the drawings as soon as there's clear direction on what that community center is going to be, and would like to build it tomorrow if we could.
It's good to hear. And obviously with the childcare, it sounds like the childcare seems to be moving in a more positive direction. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, staff have been working on getting the one in the western neighborhood that was moved to West Fraserlands moving, which is great to see. And then, there's been a process of, I believe on the city side, I don't want to speak for staff, but my understanding is, really looking at the locations that were anticipated early on for the childcare and making sure operationally they're in the right spots for the city. And so there's been some work to relocate those into a bit of a hub with the community center. And just would add, in addition to the city community centers that are in the plan, we're in the works, and have a tenant in the TI process to open a private childcare as well.
Okay, and then you've talked about making this kind of a complete community. Are there elements that you think are missing that the city should be emphasizing on? And what are your conversations been with TransLink and others to ensure you're getting all the connections needed? And then I guess my last question would be, obviously the utility DCL, do you think that you will be able to utilize the eastern utilities to serve this neighborhood in the long term?
Yeah, in terms of the complete community piece, the vision for this master plan is quite extensive, and I think it's a very strong plan. It has great bones in kind of the public space network and how it flows and interacts in the park network. So I think that plan's quite strong. I think the biggest thing that we've heard from the community is the pace of amenity delivery really needs to keep up with the pace of development, which can be challenging in the kind of capital planning cycle. Park delivery is behind, but is catching up. But that's the biggest thing we hear on a regular basis. In terms of the transit piece, TransLink was engaged in this process and did their own planning work as well over the last number of years as part of the updated transit plan. So there is a new bus route that serves the community today, and there's plans to expand the bus offerings in the community. With the next one coming, it will cycle its way through the River District community and then go west to Marine and Canby SkyTrain, which would be a great network. And the other main link they're trying to get is north into Champlain Heights and then to Metrotown to the SkyTrain there. And then on your last question on the UDCL, yeah, we've done extensive analysis of this with the city, and frankly, when the UDCL was being put into effect, we disputed it quite aggressively, I would say, with the city in this neighborhood, because we don't flow very little of the utility flow in this neighborhood actually utilizes the existing city utilities network. Generally, what we're flowing into is something we're already building. Storms going to the river, and then a lot of the flow is going to the Metro Vancouver system. And so, we knew this charge was going to have a significant reduction in the CAC and the ability to deliver amenities to this updated plan. And so, there's a fair bit of engineering analysis that's gone into looking at that and knowing that the community is, effectively self-sufficient from a utilities perspective.
Okay, and I guess I've got 30 seconds here. The bridge to create an upland connection at Kinross with an elevator, is that something that if we work with you on different kind of amenities in the future might be an option?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to work with the city and the community to resolve those things as part of the amenity package.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weeb. That's it for questions in this round. So I got it slightly wrong. Councillors will have an opportunity to ask West Group more questions after the speakers, so because they're more of a consultant rather than applicant in this case, so slightly different than our regular public hearings. But with that, we can move to the speakers list, and I believe first up is Minister George Chow.
Mayor Stewart, I understand that George Chow, Speaker, Public Body Speaker Representative number 1, is not on the line.
Okay, thanks so much. So moving on to the non-representative list, public speaker list, we have Milt Bowling as speaker number 1.
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me?
Sure can, up to 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks very much. Hello to Mayor Stewart and council members. I appreciate this opportunity to make a brief presentation. I'm the co-chair of the East Fraser Lands Committee. I've been at that for 20 years. And we've been active participants in the community consultation process for this whole time. When we first formed the EFL committee, we made a decision to work collaboratively with the developer and the city, and we did that for all that period of time, right up till 2006 when the ODP was passed, and how to just demonstrate how collaborative we were when that ODP passed in 2006. Everybody in the arena there applauded. Everyone came out into the central area and were doing a happy dance and high-fiving and hugging. It was awesome just to show, how we work together to get what we've got. So now our situation is that the amenities that were promised haven't arrived yet. And I read through the proposal from keep wanting to say Park Lane, West Group, and I agree with that. I think if that what's in that proposal is what it's going to take to deliver the amenities, then I'm all for it. We, had an idea that we wanted to have a complete, sustainable, walkable, cyclable, diverse community with all the appropriate amenities and a high degree of affordability. And, all the amenities, the community center, childcare, parks, schools, etc., seem to be at the back of the bus. And we just hope that you can find it to come to an agreement with amongst yourself and West Group that we can have these finally come to fruition. We tried to incorporate the West Fraser lands in with our group as well. And there were a number of people that lived there that came into with us on our committee because they were promised school and other things that didn't happen. So we combined our efforts to make sure that all these amenities are met. And so far they haven't been, but I'm confident in reading through the proposal that they will be. So I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. I don't see any questions for you on the council list, so I'm going to move on to the next speaker, but thank you so much for coming in. Council, we have, thank you. Hope Sterling is the next person on the list. And Hope Sterling, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can. 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to share my comments on the East Fraser Lands Official Development Plan and Public Amenity Financial Plan 10-year review. That's a mouthful. My name is Hope Sterling, as you mentioned, and I am the principal of David Oppenheimer Elementary School, which is the feeder school for many of the families in the River District. And I, as well, live in the River District. My purpose in speaking today is to support the proposed official development plan amendments being contemplated, specifically as they relate to the in-kind delivery of the community centre by West Group Properties. As principal of David Oppenheimer Elementary, I feel it is my duty to represent the families that we as a school community work hard to serve. Over the last few years, the demographics of our school community has been changing. When I first arrived at Oppenheimer 3 years ago, there were only 16 is a large number anyway, 16 language groups and a modest amount of English language learners. Now we have 29 different language groups with over 25% English language learners. The overall socioeconomic level at Oppenheimer is decreasing. For the first time at Oppenheimer, we now have 30 students accessing the free Vancouver School Board lunch program. Also, South Vancouver Neighbourhood House provides food bank supplies for about 35 local families in need. Our families need a place near home where their children can attend extracurricular programs and other supports, with the option to receive subsidies if there are financial barriers. A community centre would offer them exactly that. Now, each year, BC schools have a legal obligation to create what's called a school growth plan that lays out their specific school-wide goals. These goals are based on the needs that the school staff deem as a priority for their population. This year, our primary goal is focused on social-emotional learning. We found that we have a large number of students with anxiety and other emotional needs, and sadly, the pandemic has done nothing but magnify these issues. Research tells us that one of the best ways to support students with anxiety and depression is to create a sense of belonging and to have a safe adult that they can connect with. Our community needs a place to come together to support one another. This is yet another strong argument for the expedited build of a community centre. During the pandemic, we have become increasingly aware of not only our emotional needs of our population, but the basic needs of our families in our catchment. Presently, they do not have easy access to many basic services and supports. A community centre would allow them a point of information and referral and outreach. It would also provide a space to build connections with other families in our community. Now, I understand that City currently has an anticipated funding shortfall of at least $15 million for the community centre, and I think that the proposed plan to have West Group Properties deliver the community centre in exchange for additional residential density is a smart solution to address this funding shortfall. The option would give us certainty and a timeline for delivery of the community centre. So in conclusion, having a community centre in our neighbourhood is very important for our families. They have been waiting too long, and they don't want to wait any longer, and they don't want City Council to deliberate, and they want them to secure the funds to deliver our community centre as quickly as possible. So thank you very much for listening to feedback from our families and our friends and neighbours tonight, and we care deeply about our community, and we want to see the City move forward with securing a permanent community centre to serve the families of East and West Fraser Lands. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your presentation this evening. I don't see anybody on the list to ask you questions, so I'm going to move on to the next speaker. Speaker number 3 is Vic Sangara.
Hello.
Hi there. Up to 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor Stewart, councillors, and planning staff. My name is Vic Sangara, and I'm a physiotherapist and a co-director of River District Physio. I've called to offer some brief comments in support of the East Fraser Lands Official Development Plan amendments being considered here tonight. I understand that the proposed plan amendments will allow for the development of new rental and affordable housing to support future population growth, as well as the delivery of key amenities, including a new permanent community centre. As a business owner in River District, I firmly believe that we need better housing options to support our local workforce, and I'm supportive of the plan to build a range of housing options in our community, including more affordable alternatives to home ownership. I also look forward to welcoming new residents who I hope will form a consistent customer base for businesses in the River District. I would also like to comment on the community center. I was pleased to learn that plans are underway to deliver a permanent community center, which will be built over the next several years. Currently, we don't have a community space where residents can build connections with neighbors, participate in physical activities and social programs. Given my background, you likely won't be surprised that I am a huge proponent of promoting physical activity and community health. The new community center in River District will help residents get active with free and low-cost fitness programs. There are only 2 community centers that are located north of the River District. Unfortunately, neither of these amenities are accessible on foot, and transit service is still limited in our neighborhood. Although I know it is still a few years away, we're really looking forward to having a community center of our own in the River District. Just to give a little bit of a background and perhaps on how a community center can affect childhood and somebody's upbringing. I grew up in northern BC in a small little town called Williams Lake. I'm a first-generation Canadian. My dad had no option, but when he moved to Canada, he had to immigrate all the way out to Williams Lake to find a job at the mill. I grew up there for 19 years. I was a competitive swimmer for most of my life, and in my senior year, our pool had to shut down. We only had access to one pool. Now, learning from that lesson, I knew how much that shutdown of that pool affected me and my journey. My dream was always to go to the Olympics, and that was cut short because our pool had to shut down during that year. I know a lot of these kids who are growing up in the River District, they have dreams just like I did. And I would love to be a part of programs to help these kids and help them learn and grow kind of throughout the community with physical activity and any sort of mentorship that we can provide. When we decided to open up a business in the River District, we thoroughly reviewed the plan that was set forth and proposed to us, and it was something that we were really intrigued by. We love the community and we support the growth and potential here, and that's why we decided to open up an office here in the River District. I hope you guys can learn from even past, delays in the sense that I understand that there's community centers all around Vancouver that have been delayed with projects before. And hopefully we don't have to continue this trend and we can learn from some of these mistakes and move forward and help support our communities, help support our children, and help support the growth of these young guys who are going to be our future. And I think it's our duty and opportunity to really invest in them. And the only way we can do that is with this proposed plan, with West Group willing to help out and then move forward with this. So thank you for the opportunity to address, for allowing me to address council tonight. I hope that council will support the plan before you deliver a range of, before you're here to deliver a range of new housing and community amenities to serve current and future residents of River District. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions from council for you, so I'm going to move on to the next speaker. Thank you so much for coming in this evening, or participating at least, since none of us are here. We're all virtual. Next speaker number 4 is Zahara Ishmael.
Hi there, can you hear me?
You sure can. Please go ahead up to 5 minutes.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Stewart and councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Zahara Ismail. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm calling from the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I am the executive director of the South Vancouver Neighbourhood House. As you know, neighbourhood houses are community-based organizations that work with local residents to strengthen the neighbourhoods that we are situated in, to create meaningful engagement and meaningful change. I am in support of the plan before council this evening, which proposes to update the ODP to allow for increased housing diversity, including social and secured rental housing, and a more robust public amenities package, including more childcare spaces and parkland, as well as a funding strategy to secure the delivery of the community centre by a developer. In particular, I would like to advocate for the construction of a community centre in the River District area. South Vancouver Neighbourhood House has been in regular contact with city staff over the past few years around the needs of the community in the developing River District area. This stems from concerns brought forward from countless residents in the West and East Fraserlands areas who have consistently been raising the issue of a lack of social spaces and amenities in their immediate neighbourhood. People lack places to connect, and much of what has been promised for years has yet to be delivered. Over the past several years, the South Vancouver Neighbourhood House has been conducting research to better understand the landscape across South Vancouver. Through our research and community consultation, we have found compelling evidence that supports the need for investment in physical infrastructure and social services. I would like to share some quick facts that you may find very compelling. The neighbourhoods of Sunset, Victoria, Fraserview, and Killarney, which make up South Vancouver, consist of over 100,000 people, which is approximately 1/6 of the overall population of Vancouver. The demographics include 80% racialized persons, 56% newcomers, and a high density of English language learners. This is according to the 2016 census. South Vancouver has a high density of seniors, with 16% of the population being seniors, the largest household sizes, and the highest percentage of households with children at home, of about 51% of households, which is well above the City of Vancouver average of 30% in Vancouver. I cannot think of an area more in need or deserving of spaces to participate in physical recreation, access to programs for children, youth, and seniors, and overall opportunities for community connection than I can think of in South Vancouver, including in the River District. The River District needs a community centre to be built, and they need it soon. There is an influx of new residents moving to the neighbourhood, and without adequate support, people are struggling with isolation, mental health challenges, and access to basic essentials. As you know, transportation is a major concern in the East and West Fraserlands, and residents, especially young families and seniors with mobility challenges, cannot be expected to take unreliable transit or walk up a steep hill to access services. The city has a commitment to creating a healthy city for all. This needs to include the residents in the East and West Fraserlands area. In addition to a much-needed community centre, the Fraserlands area would greatly benefit from a neighbourhood house presence, which is not included in any of the current development plans. Neighbourhood houses offer a unique approach to building social connection and strengthening community. Community centres cannot replace neighbourhood houses, nor vice versa. Both types of organizations are essential to create healthy communities, particularly when there is a large influx of new residents and a need to build relationships between long-term residents and people new to a neighbourhood. This becomes even more important when there's a need to bridge gaps in language, cultural, economic experience, and so much more between residents. Neighbourhood houses are also designed to be low barrier and to engage people who struggle to participate in mainstream services. While the growing River District area falls within the current catchment of South Van Neighbourhood House, without additional resources and space, SVNH is currently limited in the type of placemaking that we can facilitate in this unique and growing neighbourhood. We strongly feel that a separate neighbourhood house or a neighbourhood house satellite is essential for residents in the River District area to thrive in the decades ahead. Thank you for your kind consideration. While we recognize that the city will have many priorities to deal with in 2021 and the next few years, we strongly advocate for the construction of a new community centre in the River District and the addition of a neighbourhood house site to be among your top priorities. I hope that you will approve the plan before you this evening to secure the community centre in kind by West Group Properties. Here we have an opportunity and a plan to deliver the long-awaited community centre to serve the many families and seniors living in the River District. I appreciate the opportunity to address Council this evening, and I thank you for all of your hard work. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. You do have a question from Councillor Carr. Councillor Carr, go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Yes, great. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was fantastic, and I really appreciate the information and the stats that you provided for us. I'm curious about the process of setting up a neighborhood house. I haven't been aware of a particular process, either as a separate neighborhood house or as a satellite, as you said. And I wonder if you could just let council know or describe to council how that would happen.
So the Association of Neighborhood Houses is the parent organization of South Vancouver Neighborhood House, and we have two examples of new neighborhood houses that we're developing in partnership with the City of Vancouver, or have developed over the past few years. One of them is the Marpole Neighborhood House, of which I'm also the executive director. So that was created through an RFP process that the city put out, looking for an operator for the new neighborhood house at Marpole Place, what used to be Marpole Place, at Hudson and West 70th. The other example is Arbutus, a neighborhood house, which will be opening up in the next 2 years or so, also under A&H BC, that's the Association of Neighborhood Houses. So if the City of Vancouver was to recognize the need for a neighborhood house, it could be a standalone space, it could be within other social spaces like a community center or connected to a library. There's a number of different ways to go about it, but either putting out an RFP or connecting with the Association of Neighborhood Houses to explore capacity, I think would be the best ways to go about getting this done. I would love to see personally more connection and integration or co-location between community centers and neighborhood houses. And I would say that the River District is probably a great example of how we could try that out, because I don't think it's been done before.
Great. That's fantastic information. Thanks again for coming and speaking to us.
My pleasure.
Thanks. Councillor Weeb also has a question for you. Go ahead, Councillor Weeb.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. You talked about maybe co-locating with the community center. Have you had dialogue with the developer or with city staff about that being an option, and to just ensure that there is enough square footage to coexist, to have a neighborhood house and a community center in the same facility?
I've attended all of the pop-ups that have been held at the River District area, and I've mentioned to staff that my feeling is that there needs to be a neighborhood house presence, that the community would strongly benefit from that. What I've been told is that designs are already drawn. I don't know if there's a lot of wiggle room, but I think there needs to be. And so anyway, it's been very preliminary. I've definitely suggested the idea. Not really sure how to move it forward, but I think it would be an oversight if there wasn't specific energy put into exploring what a neighborhood house as well as a community center would look like in the River District.
Yeah, it seems like a lost opportunity. What is the average size of a neighborhood house? And for this size of a neighborhood, how much square footage do you think would be appropriate? Kind of what range? Recognizing that they could co-share space, but what is kind of the range that we'd be looking at square footage wise?
It's a really good question. I'd say somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 square feet. We currently at South Vancouver Neighborhood House are opening up a satellite at Fraser Commons, which is only going to be about 1,000 square feet of programmable space, and that's going to be a satellite of SCNH. And I think, the point that I was trying to make is that right now, SCNH has River District in our catchment area, but we're not able to do adequate placemaking without additional space and resources, because we're stretching really, really far. And so, it's very difficult to be able to do that. If there was a satellite that was established, we could have that under SCNH, which could be smaller perhaps, because there could be sharing of administrative staff and things like that. I feel like the neighborhood could also justify a standalone, a separate neighborhood house, which would need to be larger with its own team. So there's kind of two ways to go about it.
Really appreciate you speaking and bringing that expertise to the conversation today. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I have Councillor Fry on the list too. Councillor Fry, go ahead.
Gosh, this is so awkward. All three Greens hitting up with questions. Nice to hear from you, Zara. Thank you. But Councillor Weed's question sort of triggered something for me. One of the pieces contemplated in this work in the ODP is an increase in retail spacing and sort of more retail zones. How do you anticipate a neighborhood house has to exist? Can it be, are modern neighborhood houses better suited to kind of a retail environment, or more like that sort of Kitsilano neighborhood house where it's tucked away into a residential component? Is there best practices that we're considering with this kind of thing?
It's a great question. Personally, I mean, one of the purposes of a neighborhood house is to be a drop-in space. It's supposed to be the living room of the neighborhood. And so that can be done in a retail space, but it has to be enough space that people can feel comfortable to come in, have a cup of coffee, and get to know their neighbor, read the paper, play a game of cards, and also access programs, services, information. So really a place where neighbors can come in and take ownership of a space a little bit. In my opinion, that's really important, particularly as more people are living in vertical spaces where maybe home space is a little tighter. Having a larger community space for people to hang out and build connection is really key. So ideally, I think more of a sprawling space would be good. The last few experiences that we've had at SBNH has been more of the retail space. We had a satellite in South Hill, and now we're opening up Fraser Commons. And, you know, we're used to doing the most with what we're able to access with community. But when the space is limited, the opportunity for community development is also limited.
Right. So I guess key factors really are then just accessibility above all and comfort.
Yeah. And, you know, I think one of the key differences, I use my community center all the time, and I think it's absolutely essential that the community center be built. No question about that. Community centers tend to be more about rec and programming, and so the neighborhood house would be there to help people who might have barriers to access in terms of affordability or maybe language barriers or other sorts of needs where a neighborhood house would be able to catch those people and help them integrate into community and really kind of turn over the space to them so that the community can program the space themselves. There's a lot of peer-led programming, a little bit more grassroots type engagement at a neighborhood house and advocacy as well.
So shifting a little bit, you and I have spoken about food security in this part of town quite a bit. Specifically in East Fraser Lands, are you seeing an emergence of food insecurity?
Yes. South Vancouver Neighborhood House has a food hub and spoke program that we're operating right now. And the only location that we're still looking, we're quite at capacity in terms of what we can do at the moment, but the only location that we're looking for a space to operate a spoke is in the River District area. It's the greatest gap. We have a program in partnership with City Reach and the YWCA in Champlain Heights at the YWCA Pacific Spirit Terrace. But if you live in the River District, it's not accessible at all. So people in the River District currently are cut off from that.
Okay, well, thanks for all the work you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
That's it for questions. Thanks so much for phoning in this evening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Esther Moreno is speaker number 5.
Hello, mayors and councillors. I'm really excited to be here. If I could just ask the speaker to put up my PowerPoint and let me know when it's ready to go.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
It's up there.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you. My name is Esther Moreno, and I am thrilled to be here. I'm a mother of 2, a wife, and a neighbor, and I'm here to ask the councillors and mayor to pave the way for West Group to commission the build of the community centres by saying yes to the 2 motions ahead of them. In my presentation today, I hope to have the councillors and the mayors feel well acquainted with 2 really important things about my neighbourhood. One is the rental density, and the other is to hopefully familiarize yourselves with our geography. Next slide, please. So as you can see, this is a beautiful area. In 2008, my husband and I chose to buy here, and we have to the north of us the Fraser View Golf Course just above Marine Drive, and every morning I get to wake up to the view of the Fraser River. But what isn't visible in this slide is the rental housing density that is held within a small 500-meter stretch below Marine. So to the left of that circle is Elliott Street, which is also known as Clarendon further north, and Kerr is on the far right, which is Rupert. And in that 500-meter stretch below Marine Drive, we hold the following rental housing density. Next slide, please. The first 2 entries in that table were added to our community in the last year. And it's no surprise to people that we have a crisis of housing in Vancouver. And I'm delighted that our neighborhood is seen as a place where we can respond to the needs of our community members of this city and house these families, many families, as you can see there, 2 and 3 bedroom units. We hold over 1,000 housing units in that small 500-meter span. And yesterday, Kirsten Robinson mentioned an additional 937 units that have recently been built in just west of Kerr as social housing. So we are definitely doing our part down here. Next slide. And with the rental housing, you can see, as Zara as well as Hope have mentioned, the number of families choosing to move into this community is increasing. And the needs of those families is great. We need a food security hub, and we don't have a location or a space like a community center to run that out of. And these families also are limited to parks that are for kids that are aged 8 and under. Used to be people just stayed here when their kids were 5 or 6 and then they moved on. But people are choosing to raise their children in strata units. And in those circles there that you see, which are all the housing units in this area, rental housing units in this area. And it's a great community, but kids that are over 8 don't have play spaces that are adequate for their age. And as some of you received and viewed some of the videos that I sent from the youth, they don't have a place to hang out. And many of the families previously that chose to stay and didn't move out said that that was the hardest time in raising their kids, that there wasn't a place for them to go to that was within community. Although it may appear that we have community centers near us, I also want you to realize the geography of this area that actually makes those very inaccessible to many. Next slide, please. So these are some really beautiful shots I took 2 years ago in the record snowfall year where school was closed. So we all headed to Elliott with our toboggans and our sleds and enjoyed an amazing day of sledding. So that's a joyful experience that we spent in these hills. However, I now want you to imagine the seniors that live in this community, as Zara alluded to, trying to climb that hill to access transit, trying to climb and get to the top and then take 2 connector buses to arrive at either of the community centers that are within a kilometer of our space, but are up a steep grade hill. Next slide, please. I just really want to drive home that although this looks like a really flat space, it is not. To the left at 13%, that's the steepness of the grade along Elliott, which you saw what it looked like and how awesome it is as a snow hill. But I want you to imagine on all of those 3 corridors, councillors and mayor, of a young mother pushing a buggy, as well as holding the hand of a toddler and trying to get to transit. Or if they don't have an hour to spend on transit navigating a stroller, trying to go up the far right hill of a 12.5% grade followed by a 10% grade. To me, that's inaccessible. That's not accessible amenities, which is why we would love the community center to be built in our neighborhood. It's been a long time since we've had something new. We love the Fraser River. We love it's a great hub for us to meet. But we have always only had an outdoor space down here.
Thank you, Speaker. We're over the 5 minutes, but just wanted to say thank you so much for your presentation this evening. And I don't see any questions for you, so we are going to move on to the next speaker. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart.
Thanks. And Council, our next speaker is Speaker 6 withdrew. We have Speaker 7, Noreen Colbert. Sorry, Noreen Colbert I have here.
Mayor Stewart, it is the clerk here. While we do have some numbers on the line that we're not able to identify, we believe that Noreen Colbert, speaker number 7, is not on the line.
Okay, thanks. And there's always a chance at the end if we've missed for folks to come back on. So I'm just going to move on, Council, to Sally Teach, speaker number 8. On the line that we're not able to identify, we believe that Noreen. Do we have Sally Teach?
I am here.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. Up to 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thanks a lot for hearing me. My name is Sally Teish, and I've lived in the West Fraser Lands for the last 28 years. I was a member of the Victoria Fraser View Killarney City Vision Project, and then a founding member of the East Fraser Lands Committee. And I'm speaking to you this evening in favor of the community center, but opposed to the increased density that's proposed in the ODP review. When my family of 5 moved to the West Fraser Lands, it was with the promise of a community school, daycare, shops, improved transit, and parks. To date, nice parks and greenways have been developed all along the river, but there's not a single public amenity that has been built between the Knight Street Bridge and Kerr Street below Marine Drive. One example of what this has meant for us is that in the 28 years that we've lived here, we've had to get into the car to vote in every municipal, provincial, and federal election. There is no walkable enclosed facility anywhere in the West Fraser Lands except for the washrooms that are in the park. So our experience in the West Fraser Lands motivated me to get involved with the East Fraser Lands Committee. I had spent several years with this committee working with the city staff and the developer to negotiate an ODP. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay.
Loud and clear.
That would assure the delivery of an adequate amenity package that would service this new community and also help the adjacent West Fraser Lands. I say negotiate because that's what it was. It was trying to strike a balance between density and what was being pushed by the developer and community, the needs in the community for a walkable, livable, mixed, and well-served community and neighborhood. And that included a full-size community center that was supposed to be built in Area 1. Well, that brings us to today, 14 years after the ODP was adopted and approximately 1/4 of the build-out complete. And except for a tiny amount of park space and a walkway along the river, not a single public amenity has been delivered. In the report yesterday, city staff commented that much progress has been made on the delivery of amenities. Sorry, but I just don't see it. Yes, some rental and social housing has been built, but there are still no schools, there's no library, there's no childcare centers, just to name a few of the amenities that are so needed in the community. And the first childcare center that's projected to be completed in 2024 is not even being built in the East Fraser Land, it's being built in the West Fraser Lands. So now we're being told that the community center could be built by 2027 and maybe a bit earlier, but then only if it's built by the developer with adjustments to the city-wide utility cost levy. But that part of the agreement would include a significant increase in density in Area 3. So from the original EFL statement and 2006 ODP that projected a population of between 10 to 12,800 people with corresponding amenities, the new density projected in the revised ODP is up to 18,500 people. This represents an increase of between 50 to 80%. And what amenities would be added? Apparently 20 daycare spots and some more green space, mostly along the walkway. To me, this is an insult, and from a planning point of view, makes no sense at all. Let me be clear, I'm not opposed to the increased density per se. I am opposed to increased density that simply looks to add more people without analyzing the impact that this will have on the community and the adjacent neighborhoods and what amenities need to accompany this increase. Well, how did we get here? How could the city have negotiated a deal with the developer and the community that could never be realized? One can only assume that the city staff knew or ought to have known that the building of the community center would never happen with the existing formulas of CACs and DCLs in the agreement. And in fact, yesterday when city staff was asked by Councillor Boyle, how did this happen? The answer was, quote, the CACs were very low compared to the rest of the city from the get-go. My question is why? This wasn't the first large-scale development the city was involved in. And to say now that one of the reasons the community center can't be built is because of escalating costs, well, of course costs have gone up. Wouldn't that be taken into account when formulating a long-range plan? So how is it possible that in today's booming housing market in Vancouver and the apparent success so far of the East Fraser Lands development, that the agreement with West Group didn't include a way to capture advantage for the community? How is it possible that once again the community finds itself in an impossible situation where the only choice is between increased density or no community center in the foreseeable future or ever? Where is the city's responsibility in all of this? I wholeheartedly support the community effort to make sure the community center is built as soon as possible. There's no doubt that it's desperately needed. But let's separate the building of the community center from the issue of density. If Council chooses to go ahead with the revised ODP as proposed today, then Council must minimally analyze what went so wrong with the original plan that has led us to where we are today.
Thank you so much. You do have a question from Councillor Hardwick. Councillor Hardwick, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for your insight and long view on this development. This is not the only example that I've seen in projects coming forward where we're now allowing additional density in order to receive amenities that should have been provided for previously. But here we are. So I'm quite certain that we're going to hear a majority of people in favor of this. They're desperate to get a community center, and people are willing to bend over to do whatever needs to be done to get that. So if we're not able to turn the ship around, what is your best advice?
Well, I am for going ahead and building the community center, as I said, and doing it in the way that's proposed in the review. But I think it's really important that we separate that from the ask for increased density, especially in Area 3. I don't know how Council is going to be dealing with those two issues because I do see them as somewhat separate issues. My understanding is that the community center can be built with a certain amount of increased density in Area 1, without looking at this incredible increase in density in Area 2 that brings the population to over 18,000 people. Now, as I say, that's possible to do, but to add 20 daycare spots for that significant increase in population makes no sense to me at all. And anyway, I guess my ask would be to separate those two issues and to go ahead with the building of the community center as proposed, but to separate that from the issue of density.
But the two are related, right? One's feeding the other.
Well, I think that Council has to take a serious look at what are the implications of almost doubling, well, at least going from about 50 to 80% increase in the population. What is the impact on that, on the amenities that have been negotiated up until this point? And what's the impact in terms of traffic, noise, etc.? If you look at the proposal in Area 3, right now there were 3 high-rises, and the ask is to add another 12 high-rises and increase the height of the 3 that are there. That's rather significant as far as I'm concerned and deserves quite a bit of attention before it's approved.
One of the things that you said in the last part of your remarks interested me, and that is if we can't do anything about it, we better at least have a look at, study it, and see where we went wrong. I'm paraphrasing, but is that not the essence of what you were trying to say?
Yeah, that is what I said.
Well, I agree with you. We're over a barrel here, and we better figure out how we got here and make sure that we don't repeat it. But thank you very much. I really appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for questions. So thank you so much for participating this evening. And I'm going to move on to the next speaker. Thank you. We have Paul Tatro, speaker number 9. Paul Tatro.
Hello. Hello.
Hi there. Hi, you have up to 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
I have some slides. I don't know if they're up or not.
I'll just check here with the clerks. We're just changing the screen, so I'll hold your timer until these slides come up.
Yes, Mayor Stewart, they're on our screen here in the chamber.
Oh, is this the East Fraserland's projected population speaker? Is that?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Sure.
And that's it. So I have 5 slides. I hope to get through them. Basically, my name is Paul Tatro. I live in the West Fraser Lands for the last 28 years with the previous speaker. And so I agree with the proposal to have West Group build the community center and in kind, but I don't support the increased density, and I'm going to go through and explain why. And I don't think it's necessary to answer Councillor Hardwick's question to have the increased density in order to fund the community center. I'll try and explain that as well. The first slide indicates to you what West Group has told me is the population in the East Fraser lands. And you'll notice that the estimated at current, the build out with the current ODP density is 15,250. And with the revised density would be 18,488 with over 10,000 units. It's an important figure, but that's 18,488 is 3,000 people more that was estimated by city staff yesterday. The next slide, please. Here is the East Fraser Lands density comparison with the rest of the city. The East Fraser Lands is 128 acres, which is approximately half a square kilometer. And you will see that in order to find the EFL density, you would multiply the population by 193. So I've looked at the different neighborhoods, and the EFL with the current density is projected density with the current ODP is 29,432, which is approximately 10% higher than the other densest neighborhood, which is Yaletown. If the increased density goes through today, East Fraser Lands will be 35% more dense than Yaletown, the next most dense neighborhood. Now, the impact on that, I believe, is not discussed enough at all in the report that I've read from the city on these developments. Particularly if you'll go back in 2006, you'll see that the ODP had a report which laid out and discussed the whole questions of density in terms of traffic, parks, etc. And it doesn't do that here. Next slide. This is just an example of what the changes would be. You have the 2006 ODP, 1.95 acres per 1,000 people. The major target is 2.75. With the current ODP and with the population at 15,250, it will be 1.65. And with the new density, it would be 1.47 acres per 1,000 people, which is approximately half of what is the goal, aspirational, I understand, of the Parks Board on major projects. And for example, the revised the density population increase, should this density proposal go through, is 3,200 and 33, and that should increase park space by approximately 9 acres, 8.9 acres. And what is proposed is 2 acres of park space increased. On traffic, the EFL is not a walkable community. It hasn't been for a number of years, and frankly, it won't be easily. There's just too much that's not there, and yet the residents in both the West Fraser Lands and the East Fraser Lands will need a car for the foreseeable future. The only reference to parking and walkability that I could find in the report is essentially a cry for help in Appendix D. So adjustments to the EFL parking requirements, I won't read the whole thing, but what the paragraph is saying is that as residents have moved in, staff have received strong feedback from the community and the developer on the challenges presented by the parking maximum given limited transit service in the area and challenging topography.
I've let you go about 30 seconds over just to finish your thought there, but
well,
we are.
The climate emergency plan as well deals with that in the next slide.
We have on public hearings, just to be fair, all speakers have 5 minutes, and I've given you a bit of leeway there. We do have Councillor Carr on the list to ask you a question, so that we'll give you an extra chance to explain. Councillor Carr, up to 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm intrigued by the fact that I think the speaker just mentioned something about the climate emergency plan. I'm sorry, is that what you were just about to talk about? I am interested in what you have to say about that.
Okay. I also have another comment to say about the financing of the new density, if someone wants to ask me about that. The climate emergency plan basically lays out the importance, and I congratulate the council for passing it, but it laid out the importance of reducing carbon pollution created from gasoline and vehicles and supporting walkable, complete neighborhoods. And I think you have to ask the question, what are the implications for the climate plan with the proposed increased density? I mean, you're talking about building a new city down here with 18,000 plus people at least, because what West Group talked about 1.75 people per unit. But if we're talking about 35% or so family units, I would say that might be a conservative estimate. So, and most people, and there was a speaker before that talked about the topography, etc. Most people are going to be using their cars. So
okay, I'm interested in following up on the question that I asked you. So, what would it take to, in your mind, what needs to be added to make this area a walkable, complete community? What are the sort of the top things that you would like in there?
Well, it's very hard to do that. To make it a walkable, complete community, you'd have to bring in things like schools, churches, libraries, etc. And many of these are not under the control of City Council. You can't walk. I've lived here 28 years, right? And I'm pretty active. But you can't walk up the hill to go anyplace unless you want to really,
understand that. I just was, thank you so much. I was I am interested in the comments that you have made about the, about what it takes to make a walkable, complete community. But thank you very much. That's it for me, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. And I think Councillor Boyle, you also have questions?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to follow up and see if there was something about the financing of amenities and density and growth that you wanted to add as well. Speaker.
Well, yes. I think that if you, I'm not an expert on this, and I could very well be wrong, and I would appreciate being corrected. But I did a quick calculation of the revenues for the developer on the new density. We're talking about approximately 1,250,000 extra square feet of housing. About 850,000 is market strata, and about 400,000 is market rental. And I'm guessing that's approximately almost $1 billion of new revenues. And so I think it's important for City Council to understand that. I calculate that by essentially looking at the West Group website and looking at what they're charging per square foot, and then I took $200 less off for the market rental. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but we're talking about $1 billion. And so, number one. Number two, as the previous speaker mentioned, even the city plan doesn't necessitate the increased density in Area 3 to fund the community center. There's no mention of any funding coming from Area 3 increased density. So those two factors combined, I think it's very important for the city to understand, this new revenue stream, particularly since the developer doesn't have to buy land. It's strictly a increase in density from land already purchased.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have. Appreciate your time, Mr. Tedford.
Thanks very much. And there are no other questions for you, speaker. So we're going to move on to the next speaker. Thanks so much for participating this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker, Neetu Sharma. Neetu Sharma.
Mayor Stewart, we do not see speaker number 10 on the line.
Great, thanks. Speaker number 11, Rob Howitson.
Yes, I'm here.
Great, go ahead, up to 5 minutes, please.
Okay. I'm just trying to mute my video so you guys don't hear that.
Oh, okay, I'll stop your timer until you're ready.
Please, thank you. And that's not muting, so I'll just go ahead.
Okay.
I'm Rob Howitson. I reside in West Fraser Lands and have lived my entire life in South Vancouver. I am reluctantly willing to support this amendment, but I'm disappointed that we have reached this point of desperation where we must reward a wealthy developer like West Group with more concessions, more density, less levies, in order to get the amenities that our neighborhood was promised in the East Fraser Lands ODP. The structure you see on your screens is in West Fraser Lands Riverfront Park. It is the only covered public space along the river between Argyle and Boundary. Locals call it the gazebo, and it is the closest thing we currently have to a community center. I walked by there the other evening, and a small group was having a barbecue. It wrapped the gazebo with shrink wrap in an attempt to shield themselves against the cold wind. It was a pathetic sight, and this roof without walls is an apt symbol of the tortured rollout of amenities in both West and East Fraser Lands. West Fraser Lands may be the only neighborhood in Vancouver where the list of amenities has shrunk over the years. We once had a mini mall with a convenience store at Marine and Gladstone. It was turned into condos. We once had a north-south bus route, but it was discontinued. There is a new TransLink shuttle service that recently started up in the River District, but it does not touch West Fraser Lands. It will take you to Burnaby's Metrotown, which is great if you want to go there. But if you want to go there to access SkyTrain to go back downtown to your own city, you pay an extra zone fare. We were promised a school in West Fraser Lands, and when that failed to materialize, the city planted grass on the site so that it merged with Riverfront Park to create a much-needed multi-use field for the area. That big grass field will soon shrink, for the city is preparing to place a daycare on it, a daycare that was originally slated for the East Fraser Lands. So this is what I mean when I say that the delivery of amenities down here along the river has been a tortured one. Now we're being told if we want a community center, we have to give West Group an additional 1 million square feet of residential space. I guess we have no choice. So we need the community center. So I say let's go ahead, but let's perhaps consider, some kind of way of writing into the plan that we not add any additional residential space in the East Fraser Lands, that we cap it so that we can get this master plan completed in a reasonable way where we're not overwhelming the limited road and walking path network with too many people. That's my concern. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much for calling in this evening. I see no speakers on the list for you or questions, so I'm going to move to the next speaker, but thank you again for sharing your views tonight. Next, we have Brian Bradley, speaker number 12.
Mayor Stewart, I understand that speaker number 12 has withdrawn.
Okay, thank you. How about speaker 13, Barbara Warner?
Yes.
I'm here.
Great. Thanks. Up to 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and members of council. I would like to comment on the East Fraser Lands Official Development Plan and Public Amenity Financial Plan 10-year review. My name is Barbara Warner. I have lived in the East Fraser Lands neighborhood for 4.5 years. I previously lived for 33 years up the steep hill in Champlain Heights. I currently serve as a council member with the South Vancouver Seniors Hub, and I am a passionate 88-year-old advocate for seniors in our community. The South Vancouver Seniors Hub mission is to enable, build, increase, and improve the capacity required in South Vancouver to make it possible for older adults to be independent and actively participate in the community. I have come before Council this evening to lend my support to the proposed official development plan amendments being contemplated, specifically as they relate to the in-kind delivery of the community centre by West Group Properties. Having a community centre in our neighbourhood is very important to seniors. We have been patient for long enough, and we do not want the city to spend more time deliberating how best to secure the funds to deliver our community centre. Here we have an opportunity to secure inland delivery of a new permanent community space and a firm timeline for completion. It's time to make a decision. We cannot afford to keep waiting. I have seen firsthand the value of gathering space provides for seniors through my work at the South Vancouver Seniors Hub. Community centres provide a vital hub for seniors where they can access programs and services that promote social interaction and physical activity, which contributes to their overall health. Community centres also play an important role in combating isolation, an issue affecting many seniors in our community. A new community centre in East Fraser Lands will create a place where seniors can visit regularly to see what is happening in their community, meet others, and form stronger bonds with people in our community. As more seniors downsize and might consider relocating to a place like East Fraser Lands, they lose access to the type of community amenities they are used to in other parts of town. For seniors, a community space that is close in proximity is the difference between access and no access at all. Many seniors do not drive, do not use transit, or are incapable of walking long distances. As Council is aware, we do not currently have a community space south of Marine, and other community centres such as Champlain and Killarney are not accessible for those who rely on transit or walking to get around. The hills and steepness of the grade in the area make it very difficult to access transit and amenities to the north. We need a community centre in East Fraser Lands that residents can access on foot. What a difference this would make in the lives of seniors in our community. Council, please support the plan before you, which will secure the delivery of a new permanent community centre in East Fraser Lands by 2027. We cannot wait any longer. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much for calling in. It was a pleasure hearing you this evening, and I don't see any questions for you, but again, appreciate your contribution. Thank you so much. Council, next speaker is Rahil Badwani.
Mayor Stewart, it's the clerk here. Our apologies from staff. For some reason, that was a cut and paste error on our list. Okay. It's actually Julie O'Bello.
Okay. Julie O'Bello, speaker number 14. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of this important topic. My name is Julio Bello, and I am the Executive Director at South Vancouver Family Place, and I have no slides, and I'm not going to bore you with the statistical analysis, as Hope and Zara have done a very good job at that, my colleagues. I'm here to just talk about the few challenges that we've had in delivering services with the South Vancouver and particularly the Fraserland. So South Vancouver Family Place and Fraserland Drop-In Program in the River District community has been in operation over 9 years since the inception in 2010. South Vancouver Family Place mission is to support and strengthen all families with young children and build healthy relationships and community networks by providing services and programs in a welcoming, nurturing situation and respectful environment. I would like to comment in support of the East Fraserland's official development plan amendments, which, if approved by council, will secure the delivery of a permanent community center south of Marine. In our service, we are very aware of the dire need this community has for an indoor gathering place. As the community grows, we observe a greater need of families, seniors, and single young professionals to connect with others, share parenting experiences, and participate in social and physical activities. In a society where extended families is typically far away, people find connections and support from others in a community. The community center programs cultivate these connections between residents and create healthier individuals, families, and build healthier communities. As a representative voice of families living in the area, I have come before council this evening to advocate for the in-kind delivery of the community center by West Group Properties. Currently, we are the only resource for families with children in the River District neighborhood. In 2010, our organization formed a partnership with West Group, allowing us to deliver services within the community in the area of South Marine Drive. For years, we had searched for an indoor space in this area, but were unable to find one. West Group, in good faith, offered that space for only $40 a month, which they still have not taken the dollars. West Group's properties have provided to be an engaged, supportive, and civic-minded community partner. As a result of their support, we have been able to provide a number of supports and services for the community, including 297 hours of service between the years 2019 and 2020. The program saw 408 individual families accessing the program, with 3,882 adult visits and 4,290 children visits. Out of these numbers, we saw 760 grandparents, 431 fathers, and 121 families who have been in Canada for less than 5 years. As Hope mentioned, 25% increase in new families in this district. We were able to keep the center open for 197 days pre-COVID. We still are delivering services, unfortunately not inside. We're delivering services outside. So you may find us on the Parkway delivering services for families that are in the Fraserland community. I'm also here to speak on behalf of those that are more vulnerable and whom often are unable to come to these forums due to language barriers and family commitments. Nevertheless, their voices need to be heard. We're often hearing that there are no services available for them in terms of social capacity, counseling, and various other programs. Here we have an opportunity to secure an in-kind delivery of a new permanent community space and firm timeline for completion. It's time to make a decision. We cannot afford to keep waiting. Far too many families need these connections and support. They cannot wait. I've heard several councillors talk about when this program started, that some of the families have already had their children growing up and moving on to university. We need a community center. East Fraserland, that residents can access on foot. The majority of the vulnerable families my organization serves that live south of Marine do not have vehicles. Council.
Thank you, Speaker. We're at the 5 minutes, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for your presentation this evening. And I'm going to move on to the next speaker now. You have no questions from council, so thanks again for participating. Next, I have speaker number 15, Dr. Jack Taylor.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart, members of council, city planning. My name is Jack Taylor. I'm the lead pastor at Faith Fellowship Baptist Church in South Vancouver, just north of East Fraserlands. I'm also the founder of New Hope Community Services. We've housed over 700 refugees since 2004. Also a co-founder of New Hope Daycares, which has cared for over 800 families since 2002. And our church has representatives from over 60 countries, so housing and community spaces are important to me. I've been following the planning process for East Fraserlands for over a decade. I was with Norm Shearing at Park Lane when the concept plans were first issued, and I reviewed those drawings to see the spaces designated for community building and community spaces. Several of my parishioners live in the area, and I keep encouraging families to move there because the amenities will be developed. There's walking trails, spaces. And over the years, I've participated in many of the public input opportunities that have helped to shape the evolution of that emerging neighborhood. I've including the plans that are before the council tonight. Sometimes I felt like I was dealing with a shell game because the amenities keep moving from one site to another. I've had several concept plans for daycares that keep being shelved. I'd like to express my support for the official development plan amendments that have been proposed, which will support the development of new child care spaces, parklands, diverse range of housing options, including those 350 units of social housing, the 500 secured rental homes, the approximate 1,000 market homes. We're trying to build up our community and encourage this. Not only will that facilitate better access to more affordable housing, tenures, and childcare, but I think it'll generate the funding necessary to build that community center. So we've had a robust community consultation process, and I'm pleased that progress is being made towards the provision of those amenities and the affordable housing. When people continue to move to River District, the community does seem to be incomplete. At the moment, there's no spaces for those community events, for programming, for gathering, for worship spaces. There's a real need for that community center in the neighborhood. I'd also love to see some incorporation of smaller community spaces incorporated into buildings that are added to this whole thing. I think community spaces are key to the overall health of the community. And although it's still years away, the community center will serve as that important space for connection. I think it's critical that the city establish a plan to secure the community center, which will benefit the people that are there or who will hope to move in. I'm looking forward to East Fraserlands building into a complete community in the years ahead, and I hope the city moves ahead with the proposed official development plan, the amendments, which will see the development of those child care spaces, the parkland, the housing, to serve Vancouverites at all different kind of income levels. And so West Group's proposal for their in-kind delivery, I'm supporting it. After a lot of years of careful planning and community consultation, I think it's time to bring those plans to life, along with those public amenities, and I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time this evening. I don't see any questions for you, so I am going to move on to the next speaker. But again, thanks for participating tonight and sharing your views. Council, the next speaker 16 is withdrawn. Speaker 17, Roxy Feller. Clerks, do we have Roxy Feller on the line?
No.
Okay, thank you. 18, Nathan Davidovich. Nathan Davidovich.
I understand speaker number 18 is on the line.
Okay, speaker number 18, Nathan Davidovich.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
Thanks for calling in.
Yes, I'm here.
You are here. Up to 5 minutes, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Back in the 1970s and 80s, I was a member of the Champlain Heights Planning Advisory Committee. So I know the whole history of what happened here in the neglected corner, the southeast corner of Vancouver, that has been neglected by the city for many, many years. Okay, let me just see. Okay. Yeah, unless we get some kind of an independent consultant to advise us what the mistakes that have been made, and some of them were highlighted by the previous speakers, then we'll continue to do these kinds of mistakes. It's not really just the 128 acres of this project. It's including the Fraser land. So you're looking at the West Fraser land, you're looking at over 200 acres. The largest property in Vancouver that has been redeveloped. And you're looking at a city equivalent to the population of White Rock, or even bigger. And such a dense population so far away from rapid transit is just, it just shows how mistakes are made. Now, I've submitted 3,000 words on the city website, comments, and I presume, and that's the maximum you're allowed. I don't know why you can't do more than that. There's no such maximum in any other cities' websites. I agree with the other speakers about the urban sprawl, the climate emergency is just going to add more GHG because the community was not planned properly from day one by previous council. It's not the fault of this council. It's the previous councils and previous staff. And the only people that actually tried to help us was the late Ian Waddell, who was the MP. And we did get the other bus service to connect to Oppenheimer School. But then BC Transit took it away. They said there weren't enough people using it, but that's in the 80s. Since then, the population has more than quadrupled or whatever, and we need the better bus service. And then the MLA, George Chow, he had to petition TransLink to get one bus. Then we have one minibus that runs every 35 minutes. And it's just unbelievable, that we have no city council representation in South Vancouver, and none of you people have probably even been there to see what is going on there. So it's a very sad situation, and. The only way that could be resolved is to get some independent advice. The city staff are unable to handle such a large project. It's not it's not in their mandate to design a new city. You're looking at some kind of an international consultant that has built new cities, and Vancouver city staff don't have such an expertise.
Mr.
So,
I'll just stop you there in terms of really it would be appreciated if you just commented on the core of this project, which is whether or not to accept this report. That would be great.
It's too late now. As I said, it's previous councils. You have no choice basically because you already struck a deal with West Group. So, but you can make changes to the deal. Do the same thing as in Coquitlam and West Vancouver, where they'll force the developer to pay for better transit. You know,
Okay,
unless you know what's happening, you know.
That is your 5 minutes, but you do have questions from Councillor Hardwick. Councillor Hardwick, please go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Nathan.
Yes, good evening.
You said it may be too late now. That's kind of where I'm sitting on it.
You're breaking up a little bit, Councillor Hardwick.
The previous.
Oh.
Hello?
I think we've lost Councillor Hardwick's connection. Councillor Hardwick, if you just want to turn your video off. Just a second, speaker. Speaker, we seem to have lost Councillor Hardwick. We hear little bits and bites of what she's asking, but we can't quite hear the whole thing. Yeah. So, Councillor, we're kind of stuck here. We've this will be on Councillor Hardwick's end, so there's not much we can do on this end. I think maybe we've lost Councillor Hardwick. You have a question. Councillor Weave has a question for you. Go ahead, Councillor Weave.
Yeah, it's less of a question, but I really appreciate you and the amount of time you come speak to staff, but I didn't appreciate the comments about our staff here at the city. I think we do have very competent staff that can handle this, and hopefully in future times and coming to speaking, you can respect our staff and the process they go through. Thanks.
Okay, and Councillor Weave, this is kind of a question section, so.
Well, I mean, I do respect the staff, but you know, you don't have the staff to design a new city. You know, the city doesn't have the staff to design a new city.
We're just going to kind of avoid that topic, and I am not seeing Councillor Hardwick. You are here.
Now I am here. I'll leave the video off. I have no idea what happened. I'm sorry to take people's time. I'd like to go back to, I was just saying that I've watched this since, as one of the earlier speakers referred to Norm Shearing's work. And part of the problem, of course, is a loss of institutional memory. But I would like to talk a little bit, because I think everyone is on the same page here. They're so anxious to get the community center. There's regret off of how much the developer has received in exchange for this in terms of density.
Right, Councillor Hardwick, we are in the question section.
I know, I'm just setting it up.
Thank you.
And so the question, one of the earlier speakers said, and you've also said, Nathan, that there should be an analysis done of how this has occurred. You suggested a consultant. I do think that the city needs to have a look at how far this is deviated from the original plan. But do you have any more insight specifically into how this analysis should occur as someone that has watched it over multiple decades?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely increasing the density from 10,000 people to about 20,000 people is, you know, it's a huge increase. And, you know, as I said, it's like a new city, a city of White Rock.
I understand that. That's not my question. I'm sorry, I'll try again. My question is really about the nature of the analysis, because we've observed that there has been big change.
Yeah, well, I mean, a world-class consultant who's experienced in different parts of the world, like Joe Samora, for example, who was the director of planning in Coquitlam, and is an international consultant. He'll be able to tell you what's happening in the world and how things are getting designed and how the livability and the climate emergency works together. And so you need somebody of his, of that caliber, you know.
I also know that I'm not real excited about spending a bunch of money on foreign consultants, especially when the city's financial situation is as it is. We're in a pandemic. But are there any other ways that you can think that it would be achievable to get a picture on where we've gone? We've gone back to 2006, how we got to where we are today, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes going forward.
Well, we've already made so many mistakes. We're into 2021 now, and I mean, TransLink has let us down, and there is just so many mistakes along the way, as pointed out by the other speakers. Unless we, the city council, either take a direct interest in the project and have monthly meetings or whatever to discuss and together with the MLA going forward.
We're at the 5 minutes mark.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Thanks for trying. I'm still thinking. I
Yeah.
appreciate and
Thank you.
sorry for the technical difficulties.
Thanks so much. Okay, we're on to the next speaker. We have just a single name, Omar, speaker number 19.
I'm not hearing the speaker, and I'm being told Omar is not on the line.
Okay, thanks. Speaker number 20 is David Hutniak.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some brief comments in support of this application this evening. As the Mayor mentioned, my name is David Hutniak, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Landlord BC. And I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of Landlord BC's 3,300 members, all owners and managers of rental housing, and to strongly support this application that will deliver housing, well, actually a lot of housing, consisting of 350 units of social housing, 500 homes of market rental, and 1,000 strata homes, both condo and townhomes. The application will also create some wonderful community amenities, including a permanent community center, 2 acres of park, and critically important childcare spaces. We are obviously excited about the creation of additional 500 market rental homes in the community. We are even more excited that the market rents disclosed to us by the proponent at the River District are at or below DCL waiver levels. So these units are affordable new rental homes when compared to other areas of the city. This is great news for renters, and that is again why we strongly support this application. Housing is a system, and as such, we need to ensure that we have a mix of housing typologies while considering the size of the units, ensuring there's adequate family orientation, all the while doing our best to try to address affordability challenges. The River District checks all the boxes today in that regard, and the additional housing proposed this evening will further build on this success. We are seeing housing diversity in action with this project. This is how we build strong and vibrant communities. A robust supply of rental housing is critical to overall community health and well-being, and it is an important contributor to dynamic local economies. In our view, with the economic uncertainty facing British Columbians, renting one's home will continue to be the better option for many people. The challenge then becomes ensuring we have adequate supply of safe and healthy rental homes. Landlord BC has long advocated for the need to have all levels of government working together to create an environment that ensures the continued viability of the rental housing sector. This is even more critical now as our sector continues to navigate the current and future impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please know that the challenges and uncertainties are now significantly greater, for anyone contemplating the building of new purpose-built rental housing. Building more housing in existing urban areas is critical to address our continuing housing challenges, and that means building denser housing where the vast majority of residential land is available. The City of Vancouver is no different than most communities across Metro Vancouver in that we need to increase housing diversity housing choice, and housing attainability. This project will help not only increase rental supply, but importantly, augment the supply of more affordable units. Again, that's a great win for renters. In closing, while there's much we do not know about the future for the rental housing sector, the one thing we do know is that the future is going to be one marked with increased risk, uncertainty, and financial challenges. Nevertheless, you have before you a proponent who is prepared to add over 1,800 new homes to the community, including 500 new, safe, secure, sustainable market purpose-built rental homes as part of an exciting broader housing project. It is important that you unanimously say yes to this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling in this evening. I don't see any questions for you, but really appreciate your word to this evening. We have speaker number 21. Thank you. Speaker number 21, David McBain, is next.
Hello, I'm Pastor Dave McBain from Wild Goose Community Church. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Up to 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. We've came here about 5 years ago and started Wild Goose Community Church for the River District. Since we've come, my wife and I are artists, and we've taught children's art classes, adult watercolor classes, and we got a small neighborhood grant to create community murals that intergenerational families came out on Market Day down by Romer's, and we painted murals of the Musqueam community, the explorers, the logging industry, and a modern mural. And West Group has graciously hung them in the area, although they've moved a few times since then. Our small congregation was meeting at Tugboat Landing, and it was graciously opened a place there for us. And until COVID hit, and then we lost our venue. And since then, we've like other congregations, been on Zoom, and when we haven't, we met in the park, Riverfront Park, and that picture that you saw a little earlier, that gazebo, when it wasn't rented out, we used it, or sometimes just we had tents out in the middle. Unfortunately, when we've looked into renting space in the River District for sacred space, for church services, we've been told down by the new hub of the River District that they only wanted certain businesses on those floors. And even though we had made a big proposal for child daycare earlier in the time, we were not able to get funding, even as a temporary one for that. My concern, though, was that West Group has a community center. And although they have allowed us to do watercolor classes and other classes, they consistently refused to let us have worship services there, even though the building was not being used on Sundays. And I phoned them, or I wrote them a letter. They didn't reply to the letter, but they did phone me back and said, you're not going to get it. So I have some concerns about the attitudes towards places of worship in the area, and especially if they're going to be building the community center. And I am in support of the motion. I'm also in support of social housing that West Group wants to put in, and I think that's very positive. But I would like some assurance that just being a Christian group will not just see us be hampered in renting space in the community center if we get it, or other spaces in the area. And I've been disappointed in that. And I'd like to just point out that there has been a study done called Valuing Toronto's Faith Congregations, the HALO project, and it recognizes the great benefits, the soft benefits frequently of churches in their neighborhoods in Toronto. It was initially done in Pennsylvania, but it also showed that for every dollar that churches spend on their own programs, $4.77 go towards the community. It tried to do this, and here are some of the direct impacts that churches have. Pastors deal with counseling and at times suicide prevention. They help people gain employment. Pastor Jack, who spoke recently in his number 15, he talked about all the work, and we're sort of their church plant down here, but all the work that they had done with refugees. Crime prevention came out in this paper. Helping end alcohol and substance abuse, enhancing health and reducing the cost of illness, teaching children pro-social values, promoting youth civic engagement, helping immigrant and refugee families settle in Canada, which has been a big one for Faith Fellowship. And we have been somewhat working towards that too down at Wild Goose. Preventing divorce as we work with families and in counseling, and helping end abusive relationships. So my concern is that there are no spaces, sacred spaces. I hope the community will support the community center, and that could be arts too. But being an artist and being a pastor, I have this soft spot for both worship and communities of worship here, as well as
we're at the 5-minute time limit. Sorry about that, but it applies to everyone, and you're at your limit. Thank you. I don't see any questions for you, so we're going to move on to the next speaker. Thanks again, though, for calling in. Council, I've been informed that speaker number 22, Tammy Bigger, she's withdrawn because her points have been made. So we're going to move on to speaker number 23, Philip Postrowski.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you know that I've lived in River District now for nearly a decade. We were actually the very first home buyers in the area back in 2012. And the big reason that we moved here was the promise of a complete community, which includes commercial services, which have been delivered and continues to grow, and also a community center and daycare. And I know there's a private daycare coming soon, but the community center still is yet to be delivered. We've all been waiting patiently and are relieved to hear that West Group and the city have finally come to a financial arrangement that would see these amenities delivered. So please support the amendments to the increased residential density in Area 3 in an effort to deliver this new community center in a timely manner. I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank West Group for their commitment in helping foster and build a strong community down in River District. I think they've gone out of their way to host events pre-COVID and even now virtually, and to do whatever they can to build a strong community without the presence of the community center. And I can only imagine how much better things will get once we actually have one in the heart of our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you for calling in. I don't see any. There's Councillor Hardwick. You have up to 5 minutes. Councillor Hardwick for questions.
Thank you. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Colleen. How's it going?
Good. And thank you for being so involved in the community. I know you've been involved and you've expressed the positive experience that you've had working with West Group. Do you have any residual concerns about the volume of density, that the additional density that's being contemplated? And as somebody that's living in the neighborhood and, as I know, has a couple of little kids, do you have any concerns, or do you think that it's well in balance?
That's a great question. I think I don't have any concerns as long as we keep getting amenities that will prevent us from having to drive. I think that's critical. I think increased transit as well as the community grows is going to be important. The one shuttle we have is nice, but I think it's just the beginning of what we're going to need. So as long as things continue to scale at the rate of the community growing, I don't have any concerns at this time.
And with you, as I know you have a couple of little kids, is your plan to stay there all the way through them growing up? And is your commitment to be staying in the neighborhood again over the next 15, 20 years?
Yes. So my wife and I definitely, that's our plan. My children love the area, as do we. And we do go to other community centers. We drive there. but we definitely wish we could walk to one. And we're very patient, and I know it's going to happen, but the sooner it happens, the better for my kids and for everyone else in the community. So planning on staying here for a long time to come, and it's been amazing seeing the growth of this area, and really hoping that we can get this community center built soon and fully running.
So you're confident the schools will be there as the kids get into elementary and then secondary school?
I think that's a whole nother conversation regarding schools. But the schooling component isn't as big of a concern for me right now. As my focus right now is the community center, because I think that's really lacking. I think there's a lot of schools that are close by that would be sufficient for us. But it's the community center I think that we're really lacking right now.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for calling in.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Colleen. Take care.
Thank you for calling in this evening, and I think that is it for questions. So thanks very much, Councillor Hardwick. And right, so Council, that is it for speakers that have registered. So now I'm going to make a first call to see if there are any other speakers that would like to speak to this. 1-833-353-8610, participant code 1061445 hashtag. And so, clerks, is there anyone else on the line who would like to speak to this item?
Yes, Mayor Stewart, we have speaker number 7 who had registered but missed the turn is on the line.
Great, thanks. Speaker, whenever you're ready.
Hi there. Hi, I'm Noreen Colbert. Can I just clarify one thing? I did not miss my turn. I could hear you all speaking, and I couldn't. And I was trying to be heard, and I was not heard. So I did not miss my turn. I've been on the line since waiting to speak since my number 7. Okay. So just clarifying that. Hi, my name is Noreen Colbert. I've been a resident of this community about 40 years, close to 40 years. I had the honor, the very great honor of being on that EFL committee that worked collaboratively with, at the time, for about 10 years, with the City Hall, with West Group, and other members of the community to develop that ODP. We were very instrumental in that happening. And in fact, that committee won national awards for their collaborative outcome and nature. And I have to say, it's made me quite sad this evening to hear all the same old thing being rehashed over and over again about the amenities, about following the ODP, which was an agreement. I'm really filled with sadness that whole amazing collaboration that we had has not been honored by the current City Hall. That whole experience, that was an amazing experience to be part of that, both for the City Hall at the time, for West Group, and for the members of that. I do support this amenities package, not for the first time, for the umpteenth time, okay? I mean, this whole process is an argument why this city needs a ward system. When you have an area of the city that has been so ignored by City Hall for so long, and we have nobody on City Hall who speaks for us. We did at one time. You had an amazing employee there that was on our committee for a number of years by the name of Matt Shilato. I think that was his name. He came from England. He was an amazing asset to the City Hall and to our community for many years, to the community process of getting the ODP developed. I don't feel that anymore. And it makes me really sad, because that's how things get done, especially in COVID, where we have isolation at its peak anyway. That's how things get done. We need to be listening. We need to be more collaborative, and we need to be honoring past agreements. So without saying much more, I think you've got my letter there. I do support this, and I really hope that there can be some change in the attitude about honoring agreements and of and also identifying an area of the city that is very, very much forgotten by City Hall. So thank you.
Thank you for calling in this evening, and again, apologies for missing you earlier. But again, really thank you for your comments. You don't have any questions from council, so I am going to make my second call now. The numbers on the live stream and on Twitter if you want to call in to this public hearing, and I'm going to ask the clerk, is there anybody else on the line?
I'm just checking, Mayor Stewart.
Okay.
We have no callers on the line.
Okay, so I'm going to call a third time then, council. The number is 1-833-353-8610, code 1061445, hashtag to get on the list. Just to give everybody a fair chance to call in, I see it's 8:10 by my clock, so we'll take a 5-minute break and come back at 8:15. If there are no other callers, we'll move to debate and decision. So thanks, council. We'll see you in 5 minutes.
We're just getting the meeting started up again, Mayor Stewart.
Sure. Yep, thanks.
And I'm checking. We do have one additional speaker on the line.
Great. Okay, thanks so much. Speaker, if you can let us know your name and if you're a resident of Vancouver, and up to 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Mandish Atwal, and I'm a single mother, and I've lived in South Vancouver since 2014, where I moved here because I was laid off from UBC. My daughter and I really struggled. I suffered a great deal in trying to access services around where I lived. It was difficult for me to access transit, even on Victoria and Marine Drive. I couldn't push the stroller because I had a severe back injury caused by my pregnancy, so I couldn't easily get up to South Vancouver Neighborhood House or South Vancouver Family Place. And, I was able to purchase a car through my severance pay, but then, we suffered through financial hardship as well with the cost of living here. Now, in 2016, my son was born, and I had trouble even accessing doctor's appointments because my doctor is in VGH Hospital. There's such a lack of services that I need as a single mom. Even accessing the library at Fraserview is difficult. Parking is an issue there. This community center would change my children's life as they get older. My daughter is 6 years old now. My son is 4. He'll be attending kindergarten this September at David Oppenheimer School. I'm already seeing other parents struggle in accessing the school. There's a mother here who doesn't drive. Her husband works in West Vancouver, and we're having difficulty in finding carpooling arrangements for her. We need a school bus to get her children there. A community center would allow her that space and connecting with other parents that could help her, because other children are coming far out from Kerr and River District. As my children get older, I'm worried about what's going to happen to them, in terms of sports leagues, recreational activities. Both my kids can't swim. I can't even get onto the waiting list at Kalani before COVID or even now because the wait lists are horrendous. I really need this community center to open up so there's a safe spot for my children to go, because one day I'm going to have to go to work and I don't want to keep them in daycare or with babysitters. So I really hope that you support this and pass this through. If there is no community center that opens up, I will have to relocate out of South Vancouver, probably out to Delta or Surrey. So this really impacts my future and my children's future. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling in, and despite the late hour, and appreciate your comments. I don't see any counselors on the queue to ask you questions. So again, thank you very much. And I'm going to ask the clerk, any other callers on the line?
Just double checking, Mayor Stewart.
Thank you.
And no, we have none.
Great. So thanks. There are no additional speakers, so the speakers list is now closed. And since we received few public comments after 5 p.m. today, we're going to close the receipt of public comments and move on to hearing closing comments, asking questions, and to make a decision. So I'm going to ask staff, do you have any closing comments? And that would include West Group as well.
Yes, Mayor Stewart, I do have a couple of closing comments I'd like to make. It's Kirsten Robinson from the Planning Department. One thing I did want to acknowledge is that there seems to be some discrepancy in the population estimates. The staff estimates for population are that the original ODP had 12,650 residents expected. We did make a few minor changes to the plan in 2016 to add an affordable housing floor area, and we did recently convert some office floor area that was already existing to rental housing, which we think generates another 340 residents. And then this latest proposal to increase would add 2,500 or so folks, which brings us to about 15,500. Of course, everyone estimates populations a little bit differently, so there's always a fun debate about that. Just in terms of changes to the plan, we acknowledge that the community has worked with us on this plan for many, many years, since 2002. We worked really hard over the last couple of years to honor the intent of the original ODP, while making really important updates, like for sea level rise and a number of changes that we're aware of today. We also acknowledge that since 2006, the housing market has changed quite drastically in Vancouver, and there's an opportunity to help address that. 45% of the additional floor area will be city-owned affordable housing and rental housing. It's not condos. And finally, the additional market housing does help us to address our funding challenges with the amenity delivery. One of the main proposal, however, is to use money that the city would otherwise collect through UUD sales and redirect it towards the delivery of the community center. So we're trying very hard to work within the framework of the original plan and address some of these changes and needs that have been coming up over the last 10 years since the plan was approved. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Councillor Fry has a question for staff.
Yeah, and thank you for the work that staff have been doing on this and acknowledging the work of the community these 20 some years. I guess, in hearing the presentations and stuff, and hearing the frustration of the community, and the sort of nature of the shifting goalposts, I really, want to acknowledge that, yes, maybe mistakes or decisions from the past council, whatever, this is our council, and we want to do right by this community. How sure are we with these ODP amendments that we're fixing the goalposts and that we're going to address this in a timely manner for the folks who are really crying out for the amenities that they were kind of promised in the plan?
Maybe I can start by responding to that. There still is a significant financial challenge in East Fraserlands. The parks, childcare, affordable housing, and transportation still rely on DCLs that are generated from within the site and also from across the city. And so those things will need to continue to be prioritized through the capital plan. The real opportunity here is to secure a fixed timeline for the delivery of the community center, which would otherwise be challenging to secure. The nature of the development in EFL, where it relies so heavily on DCLs, does make it more challenging than other neighborhoods where we have a higher proportion of CACs, which allows us to work more closely with the developer to have them deliver amenities. It's sort of just the nature of the community being a lower value community and high industrial land value starting point. So we're really limited in the tools that we have to generate income or amenity funding for amenities here.
And has the ship entirely sailed on, say, market developments that might generate CACs in the next section, for instance? I'm sorry, I forget which number it was.
Area 3, we calculated out the potential CAC in Area 3 as well. We think it could be up to $10 million, but it really will depend on the infrastructure requirements in place at the time. Really, market density in this part of town doesn't generate the types of CACs we would like to see to pay for the amenities. So we have to be creative and look for other mechanisms, which really are DCLs citywide.
Are there, and I know you've worked on this for a while, and are there things we could have done differently?
I ask myself this all the time. I think really the decision for the city to take on delivery of the amenities was because we were using DCLs. And so we would have had to flow the DCLs through the developer. They would have acted as our contractor essentially. So at the time the decision was made that the city would take on delivery, and that would give us more flexibility to go to RFP, to hire architect teams, and to get the parks delivered in a way that we were in more control. So I think if we, looking back, hindsight is 2020, I think we probably still would have made the same decision because of the lack of CACs to give us other flexibility.
Well, Kirsten Robinson, I appreciate your candor and all the work you've been doing on this file. Thank you. I'll be supporting this.
Right. Still on questions to staff. Councillor Hardwick, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks. Kirsten, are you the most senior person on this file? In terms of
no.
longevity, by that I mean longevity on the project.
Yes, I have been working on this since it was my first job out of university in 2002.
Excellent. So you're the right person to talk to about this. So we've heard from a number of the speakers, and I think we are very aware that there's been significant change that's happened in the ODP and the plan overall. I mean, 2002, it's almost 20 years ago, right? But I think one of a couple of people had suggested that we get consultants in on this. I was thinking that this sounded like a good university student project to come in and analyze how things have changed. Maybe this is because I don't want to spend money on consultants, but do you have any further thoughts on how this could be chronicled? It is a very interesting case study. Do you have, and I think it's important that we understand how this change has happened. It was described variously as a shell game on the amenities, for example. I think you know where you can imagine where I'm going with this, but I think it's important that we really understand how things have changed over time to get us in the position that we are today. Any
Yeah.
insight?
I mean, I think we could do a post-mortem on how things have gone. That's almost, in essence, what the financial plan and strategy did. Like, we did go back to the original estimates in 2010, and it does tell us a lot about what assumptions were made that didn't come to fruition. I think one of the main learnings for us is that it's incredibly challenging to do a plan that's intended to last for 30 years because we can't anticipate everything. Like flood level rise, or sea level rise, and having to increase the FCL by 1.2 meters was challenging. We've changed our perspectives around housing mix and affordability objectives. We've changed our policies around transportation. We're trying to fit bike paths in on all the streets that didn't have them previously. So there is certainly a lot of learning that comes from these projects. Where it's challenging is where we have significant parts of the site that are rezoned, because those have development rights that have been granted, and it's harder to change those. Where we have smaller rezonings that are done over time, we can adapt more adeptly. So I think we have a number of lessons that we're taking forward to other projects. It is difficult to retroactively address them here. It's part of the reason we wanted to do the ODP update, was to capture some of those types of things.
Makes sense. Have you thought about the implications of the rezoning on the inflationary land lift? Ultimately, every time we go through a rezoning like this, it takes us from one set of values to another set of values, and that's just it's inflating the value of the land. We saw that earlier this year with BC Assessment's assessment roll, and the fact that the assessed value of the city had doubled basically since 2016, largely through rezoning. Have you considered the impact of that inflationary land lift on the cost of the land, and what doing additional rezoning might do to exacerbate the problem?
I might be out of my depth here. We have done, because the rezonings are phased, we have compared every time to the base industrial land zoning, and every time we've compared in 2008, in 2010, and then just recently in 2019, I think we did the math, we have found that the CAC is essentially the same, because the industrial land value is so high. In this case, it's in great demand across the region, and so the cost of servicing and the value of the condos are not greatly outstripping the increase in land value.
Would we need to give?
Sorry, that's as much as I know.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Would I need to do anything additional to request analysis as we've discussed here, or is that something that's implicit?
We could take that back. Certainly, we could write a memo documenting the things that we have learned in the review that aren't in the report, if it's of interest.
It's of interest. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Another question from Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. My first question is really around these arise out of the speakers. Is it possible to move forward with the amenities such as the community center without the increased density? And
I can answer that. It's
yes.
The community center does rely on the additional density in Area 1. The community center deal does not rely on the additional density in Area 3, although we would recommend approval of Area 3 for the other housing objectives. It's not tied to the community center, though.
Okay, that's good to know. Secondly, why were the CACs so low to begin with? I mean, that's a
I was
statement.
waiting for this question. Yeah, the CACs were low to begin with because the industrial land value is high. The cost of providing the servicing and infrastructure for the community is high. The location on the Fraser River and the soil condition makes the servicing costs high, which get factored into the pro forma. And there is remediation contamination in where the old mill used to be, which also makes the cost of servicing the site, preparing the site high. On the flip side, Southeast Vancouver has some of the lowest market rates. And at the time the pro forma was done, there was no development. So it's also a little bit lower because people are buying into a future vision. So it's collectively all of those factors, and it was 2006, 2008. So all of that adds up to a $6.5 million CAC across the entire site.
I appreciate those responses. Thank you. I think that does help clarify things. The neighborhood house that has been talked about by some of the speakers, is it possible to locate it within the community center? How else would we locate a neighborhood house in the area? And I might say the same thing about the food hub, which was also mentioned by speakers.
I might start with this one and then pass it over to my colleagues. We did evaluate back in the day in 2004 a neighborhood house in the context of the community center. Back at that time, we also knew that it would be financially challenging to deliver all of the amenities in the plan, so the decision was made to prioritize the community center. It's a 30,000 square foot community center with a few multi-purpose rooms in it. I'm sure through design there are opportunities to ensure there are social gathering spaces within it, but I'm going to ask Parks, my colleagues at Parks, if they can comment further, or social policy.
Yvonne,
Hi,
Hughes,
this is
social.
Katie.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Yvonne. Okay, Yvonne He in social policy. So staff strongly support the ongoing work of South Van Neighborhood House and South Van Family Place, and we agree that those kinds of services would be useful in the area. And one thing that we're trying to do is to look to incorporate some of that kind of programming in some of the shared multi-purpose spaces in one of the upcoming childcares. We've had it done in a number of places, and it's a pretty good fit. It's not a ton of space for programming, and we would need additional funding in order to contemplate additional space attached to any of the childcare.
Is that coming from the city? Like you in capital funding in a capital plan? Is that
That's right. Yeah, there. So the social infrastructure is not DCL eligible, so it would be either CAC funding or other capital funding.
Okay, appreciate that. Can I ask the same question about a church? I mean, one of the speakers raised that. How does the church get located in this area?
Our general approach to church uses is that we have enabled them through the zoning, but they're really up to the landowner to determine if they would like to lease space to church groups. They aren't typically on the list of city amenities.
No, I understand. I was just trying to figure out the process. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Those are my questions, and I appreciate the answers.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't see anybody on the list, so I have a couple of questions. So can you just remind me of what the how much money we're looking for the community center, just for the capital side?
The community center, we expect to cost $35 million.
Okay.
We have 9 collected to date. That also doesn't include the childcare on the roof that would come out of the DCLs.
Okay, and in terms of priority in the community, what is the next amenity? Like what's the next thing on the list after the community center? And maybe if you just leave the housing out, because that seems to get covered, is there what other thing other than housing is there?
Usually we hear a lot about parks delivery, and childcare is the other one. So the parks can be delivered incrementally, and they are kind of being rolled out.
Right. So really the community center is the largest piece of community infrastructure. We did hear a school though, that also is in the works at some point, or?
Yes, we have secured a site for an elementary school, and there's actually in the plan a site for a high school as well. We work with obviously the school board and the province to fund those buildings.
And you know, you've been doing this since 2002, things have changed a bit nationally. Have we ever pitched to the federal government for infrastructure funding, say for the community center or other amenities like parks? Has that ever been? Have we ever applied for federal programs for this kind of investment?
Grace Cheng is on the line. She might be able to answer that more accurately, but I do know that we have an MOU partnership with the province to help fund childcare, which some of that money is going towards the first West Fraserlands childcare site. And obviously we work with multiple levels of government on collaborating to get the housing built.
Yeah.
Anyone on the team want to pipe up?
Hi, this is Grace Chang. When we decide or when we prioritize projects across the city, what will be the more likely candidates to go for a federal funding application and provincial funding application? We go through a prioritization process. As I recall, I don't remember we actually put community center for EFL as a high priority because we are assuming that this will be funded from a development contribution. The other thing I was going to say is that, as I recall, I believe that we apply for funding for the flood protection in EFL, but it's not fully funded, but a portion of it. So I'm not saying that EFL is out of the equation, but depending on which program, we prioritize across the city.
There is a new federal budget that's coming up, but that is going to include quite a lot of stimulus based on green infrastructure. So I'm just wondering if that might be something we can keep a close eye on, and that might help offset some of the costs, or allow the acceleration of the construction, for example. Is that something we might be able to do?
Oh, definitely. We are constantly following on what is going to be like the new programs coming down the pipe, be it federal government, be it through the provincial government. We definitely will consider that. Thank you.
Right, and have we engaged MPs? I know Minister Chow was supposed to speak this evening. I did actually speak to him earlier today, and I knew he had another pressing issue this evening, so I think that's why he was absent. But have we engaged directly the kind of senior government elected officials there about?
I do not recall for this, but I remember, and maybe Dan Garrison, you're here, you can actually comment on that. I thought one of the housing projects, we actually engage, I would say senior government officials, ministers, but maybe Dan, do you remember? Sometimes we've actually engaged the ministers, right?
Yes, Dan Garrison, that's right, Grace. We have on the housing funding engaged directly with ministers and elected officials, both federally and provincially, but I'm not aware of that on funding issues related to other public benefits.
Okay, that's good. Thanks very much for your answers. We got Councillor Boyle next.
Thanks, Marin. Actually, I asked my questions before. I was just prepared to move the staff recommendations if there weren't other questions.
Great, thanks. Nope, there are no other councillors on the line. On the list. Okay, so we're on to the main queue. Great. Councillor Swanson's on the list. Actually, how we usually do it is that the mover would go first. So I'm just going to move the list around here and start with Councillor Boyle, followed by Councillor Carr, and then Councillor Swanson, and then Carr. Go ahead, Councillor Boyle.
Thanks, Marin. I will keep it brief. The key piece for me that we heard so clearly from speakers, that we've been hearing from residents, particularly from parents throughout the neighborhood, certainly for the whole time I've been on council, is how critical these amenities are and the urgency, the need to get the community center in particular built as soon as possible so that kids and neighbors in the neighborhood have that space to go and be together. So I think there are lots of important conversations to be had about why it's taken this long and about what we as a city have learned in terms of the processes going forward. We heard some of that from staff. We heard a bunch of that from speakers as well. And so I'm not going to go through all of that right now. For me, the important piece in this decision is the critical need for these services to serve the neighborhood, the residents that have been waiting for them. And so I will be supporting it, of course. I think that's really important. And despite the hurdles to get us here, I'm excited for those neighbors to see these amenities happen and look forward to visiting and seeing the children play amongst them and all of those good things that add to the vibrancy of a neighborhood. So appreciate the huge amount of work that's gone into this, the huge amount of advocacy from residents to get us here and the work our staff have done, and look forward to seeing these projects get built.
Thank you. Councillor Swanson, up to 5.
Yeah, well, the overwhelming message, of course, is that the folks who live there need the community center. It's isolated because of the hill there, because it's in a corner of the city, because the transit service isn't very good. So I think that's what we have to go with. I have a sinking feeling that the developer is probably getting a good deal. The community center will actually increase the value of the condos that they're selling. I'm hoping we can do something to beef up the transit in that area. It was very refreshing, especially after last night, to hear the support for social housing in the area. And what's my last point here? Yeah, I look forward to getting the memo from the planning department about what we've learned on this and maybe what we can do better if we get a chance to do it again. So I'll be voting in support.
Thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Weep.
Yeah, it was great to hear of the upland connection and the review that they're looking at Kinross, and there might be an opportunity in the future to put in an elevator, recognizing that it is a pretty steep hill and we need to connect this community to the other communities. It was also great to see that there's a future transit train stop in one of the diagrams, and recognizing we have work to do as council to acquire and ensure that we do bring transportation to this part of the city. Really liked Avalon and some of the green space that's been created. I look forward to working with the mayor on trying to find some of that green infrastructure funding to deliver some really needed natural flood protection as well as biodiversity to this new community, and to continue to find ways to complete this community so it has all its daily needs. And I think that that's something we continue to do throughout our planning of the city, and I think that this is a great opportunity to do that and create a community that really feels whole. So I will be supportive of staff's report today.
Thanks. Councillor Dominata.
Thanks, Mayor. And first off, thank you to staff for bringing this forward and recognizing that I know this has been a challenging file, and I really think that there's been a real thoughtful effort to advance these priorities. And I think that I think it was noted, in hindsight, maybe we would have done things the same way, but it's challenging. This is what's a brand new development, and it's a fantastic area of the city. It is one of my favorite parts of the city, and I've spent time with families down in the area, and like my colleague, Councillor Boyle, similarly heard how important this community center and other amenities, like we've talked about childcare and schools, are to the neighborhood, and particularly this part of the neighborhood, and some of the challenges with, as people have noted, the geography and the access to other services. And I know MLA George Chow has been a strong advocate of public transit in the area, and that's an area of passion for me as well. While I recognize it's not the focus of the proposal this evening, but all of these things are interconnected as we have a growing neighborhood with many young families. It's a very desirable part of the city, and but I am really excited about the continuation of this work, but I'm really pleased to support the recommendations that are before us this evening, and to really to enable the advancement of the community center and other amenities. And so happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fry.
Thanks, Mayor. And like my colleagues, happy to support this. Also really acknowledging the folks who came and spoke tonight, and the years of advocacy and frustration for people who are living in a beautiful part of town that is clearly underserviced by retail, underserviced by transit, underserviced by amenities, struggling with food insecurity. We've heard a lot of really salient and relevant points to where this process seems to have is not meeting the needs, and I think that that's a real wake-up call. And I do appreciate that our staff have been working diligently on this, but clearly there's more work to be done. And I hope that through the course of this conversation, we're triggering some thoughts about maybe how we can find thoughtful ways to activate things like a food spoke or like a neighborhood house in and amongst the future retail that we're hoping to see. And how are we going to improve transit and access to this part of town so that it really is meeting its full potential. It's clear to me that that something went awry in this process that has led us to this point, and the frustration is real. And I think it's important for that we're all collectively acknowledging that. And I can't help but reflect on my ongoing concern when we waive DCLs for market rental projects elsewhere in the city, that we are kind of setting down this very same path that we kind of see has unfolded here. And I can't help but think it may be something of a cautionary tale that we have to consider as we waive fees to incentivize market developments. So I'll leave it at that, though, and I am super happy to support this tonight as well.
Thanks so much. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. First of all, I just want to thank all the speakers who came and were very clear in expressing your concerns, your frustrations, and your hopes for the community you love. And thank you very much for coming and for sticking with us and for being such, building a community there. I also want to appreciate staff and Kirsten, is, especially since 2002, very much appreciate your candor and determination of staff to deliver the public services I know that the community needs and wants. It's clear that, for 10 years, I've been hearing from residents in the area of the whole time I've been on council that of their frustration around the community center, around the lack of amenities, about the promise around those amenities. And so I do think that this report takes us a step forward, a very big step forward, and I have hope around that. That we'll finally get it, although I wish it was on a timeline that was faster. And I did hear the West Group representatives say they'd like to deliver on a faster timeline. And if there's any way that can be delivered faster, this community's been waiting a long, long time for that community center. I also want to just acknowledge that other things have been happening since the last time in 2017, we did the review of amenities. And thank you, staff, for noting that we have purchased affordable housing sites. 2 parks have been designed and funded. We have ID'd sites for childcare, although we know we need more money for it. And the desire that staff feels strongly to deliver on this community center is a key reason for this report. I also appreciate that the representative from West Group said they also want to see delivery as soon as possible. So, you know, I think there's an alignment here on all of that. I also want to note that there were other things that haven't yet been mentioned, but I really heard the speakers around the importance of a neighborhood house and a food hub. So I hope that those can get worked in somehow. And thank you, staff, for responding back positively around that as a potential. And we still have work to do on transit. So the speakers reluctantly supported it. Some of them stating that they're not so happy about gifts to the developers. I have to say my support has I have some trepidation. I'm still anxious about seeing the actual delivery and on the timeline, if not a faster timeline. But of course, I am going to support this because I think this is a way forward, and this community has been waiting way too long to get the promised amenities. That's it, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Carr. That's it for speakers. So we can move to a vote on this item.
Point of privilege, Mayor Stewart, if I could have a vote assist in favor, Councillor DeGenova.
Great. We'll do that. Thanks very much, Councillor DeGenova. And Council, that has passed unanimously. So if the clerk might want to flip that up on the screen. Thanks very much to all involved for the conversation and the discussion around this. And now I believe we're at the end of this session, so we can go ahead, Councillor Harvick.
Have a motion to adjourn?
Okay, great. And
Second.
second, okay, I think I heard Councillor DeGenova second. So all in favor of adjourning, yay?
Yay.
Yay.
Opposed, nay? Great. So we're adjourned. Thanks very much, of course, always to clerks and staff for all your work. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Thanks everyone. Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thanks, staff.